here with Richard Blech. He is the CEO of Secure Channels. They're a California-based encryption technology provider. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today.
Great. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
So he's going to discuss some of the concerns being talked about with encryption among the government even, and how they're concerned about apps being encrypted by default. What's your take on this discussion that encryption is more of a hindrance, especially for law enforcement?
Well, I have several opinions about that, and law enforcement has plenty of tools and means to apprehend the bad guys, and having a way into encryption is not one of the ways that they would need initially at the cost of the masses that are doing good things and need the privacy or want to have privacy for protecting their sensitive data. There's far too much sensitive data out there that is being used by good people to negate that and have that exposed because of law enforcement's need to get into this and to go after the few bad people. And I can further illustrate that by the fact that we have laws in place already for this, whether it's in paper form, which is the analog world, and as we shift to this digital world, there are still the same laws that apply, which is due process. If there is a suspect, there's probable cause, law enforcement goes to court, they get a warrant, and they go after the bad guys, and then they can get into that data.
Okay, great. And I mean, some of the major tech companies here, like Apple, have, after some of these Snowden leaks, have made announcements that they're enabling encryption by default. Their response has been mixed, not necessarily from the security community, but is this giving users more dependence on these companies? They just think that now they're safe, now that they have it by default. Do they need to know that next level of what they can be doing?
I believe that technology companies need to make their technologies that are clearly understandable for the users, and it should be in a way that is not just a way of doing it, not the Apple way or the Google way. They can create those technologies great, but they have to assume that the users or they shouldn't assume that the users are incompetent or don't understand that. They have to be able to have their technology explained and understood by the masses so they know what they're dealing with here, and it's not just something that is left on or off and assuming that it's taking care of it. You want to know what you're doing and what you're dealing with.
And I would imagine this would come to play with BYOD and people bringing these personal devices and thinking, oh, it's safe, it's already automatically encrypted. But what does that mean?
Well, that's even more of an illustration of that fact that you have to understand what you're dealing with here. When you join into someone else's infrastructure and you're bringing your device, all kinds of things can go wrong with that, and all the various layers of security and protection need to be built into that. So that also has to be fully understood, because that's exactly the way a malware could get in and infest a system, or the other way around, that you're pulling information off and that's not left in a secure state, and then it's out in the wild. Once it's out and it's clear, it's out for anybody. There's no more putting the toothpaste back in the tube at that point there.
Talking about the sense of trust, I mean, there have been campaigns like Reset the Net, trying to get people to abide by encryption on an individual and enterprise level. And last year, there were even the conferences that stemmed off from some of the ones that have been around a long time to instill a sense of trust, or how we could get the trust back. What is the industry going to have to do, since we're talking about these efforts now that are going on to undermine encryption? What is the starting process for getting the trust back?
Well, it's a big process, and it doesn't just start with the government, because unfortunately the government, and based on Snowden revelations and all, there's a lot of mistrust there. So again, it comes back down to the core of this, and if technology is going to create these solutions to protect data, since again everything is moving to this digital environment here, the digital ecosystem, and if we're going to protect our sensitive data in that system, it needs to be done with trust and understanding. So I put the onus on the technology companies, not the government. Government legislation is going to be slow and plodding, and by the time it's implemented, the hackers are light years ahead of the legislation. So we and the technology companies need to create trustworthy, usable, understandable technologies without built-in backdoors and anything else that's going to be exposing that sensitive data. And that will start gaining trust when you can start relying on technology to have that belief system built in there that it's going to protect your sensitive data.
You just heard from Richard Blech. He's the CEO of Secure Channels. And make sure you tune in next time because we have a lot more in store for you at scmagazine.com.